What is your name?
My name is Terry Harker.
When was the last time you sang?
Last night at the Who concert.
If you could wake up tomorrow with one new quality or skill or ability, what would it be?
To sing better.
In 3 words, what does sobriety mean to you?
Freedom to live.
If you could find out one truth about yourself or the universe or anything you liked, what would it be?
Probably, where do we go after we die?
If anything is too serious to be joked about.
Nothing.
Are you a fan of IKEA?
Not at all.
So, if I gave you some IKEA flat pack furniture and I forced you to assemble it, what would your approach be? Would you get a friend to help? Would you lay everything out, look at the picture, think about it, then get started? Would you read the manual thoroughly, or would you just get stuck in?
I would get a sledgehammer and smash it to pieces.
You're really not a fan of IKEA, are you? So I think if I plug your answers into Bjorn, our proprietary algorithm, he might suggest that your sober style is anarchist. I'm just going to let Bjorn explain a little bit more about all of the stuff that we do.
Do you get discouraged when the gurus recommend things that just don't work for you? That's why you need to know your sober style. Understanding how you approach alcohol-free living will help you make the most of what you hear, including the Flat Pack Sober. Learning how you solve problems won't just increase your self-awareness. It'll make cutting through all the recovery information much easier. And that'll make your alcohol-free life solid, like some well-built furniture. Take the Sober Style quiz for free at flatpacksober.com. Welcome to Flatpack Sober, the wonderful AF, with your host Duncan Baskaran Brown.
Hey there, sober superstars. Welcome to Flat Pack Sober, your catalogue of tips, tricks, and tactics to design your alcohol-free life. Today, I am joined by a retired businessman, a published author, and a man with geological sober time, I think is the correct way to put it. So thanks for coming along today, Terry.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic.
Duncan.
So, let's get started. Let's talk about alcohol. How did you get started with alcohol then?
Oh, it's probably about 14 years old, and all my mates were drinking, so we would bootleg beer and pay somebody to get us some booze and go underneath the bridge and drink it.
Not an unusual start, I think.
No.
We didn't have bridges where I came from, but sounds vaguely familiar. Where did you go with it from there?
Well, as a weekend drinker, drank in parties, drank socially. And then as life went along and didn't go the way I thought it should, I drank more and more. And so pretty quickly, within a few years, I discovered that what I was best at in life was drinking. So that became my identity. And so I didn't care about life anymore. I just wanted to party. And so, I managed to try and get educations and jobs and things, but I always screwed them up because I was drinking too much. And really, they didn't matter to me. What mattered to me was the drink and the party and the girls and and all the trouble I could get into. I loved it. Loved to get in trouble.
It was the complete package then. It wasn't really just the booze. It was everything that went with it, right?
Exactly. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, the whole thing.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. Well, we might pick up on the music bit again later. Who knows? I mean, did you tick along for a bit, or did it kind of go wrong quickly, or?
It was a decade of debacle. I mean, I had lots of great times, but usually the great times ended in some sort of tragic scene, in a drunk tank or in a car accident or in a fight so it was a lot of that. I wrote a book about the story, which I guess is part of the podcast, and the book was called Thirst, and it tells the story of sort of a normal childhood, but with some childhood trauma like we all have, and then the teens come and the drinking comes, and it seems like that's what life's about. And then when it runs into conflict with what life is really about, like real relationships and a woman you love and maybe some children, and you're still trying to be a partier, but you have this new real life, there's the conflict, and so I kept letting myself down for who I wanted to be in real life to who I really was. Fell short of that over and over and over again. So I dragged them through the mud of my alcoholic drinking, and kept trying to normalize it, minimize it, justify it, and I'll change, I promise. But it took a lot of misery. The pain had to outweigh the fear of change to be able to want to re-identify myself as no longer a partier but a sober person. That was a difficult turnaround to do.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot in what you just said. I mean, I particularly recognize the bit about letting ourselves down. Not being the person that we really want to be. The change in identity is definitely a big thing. So, was there kind of one thing that sparked it, or was it just this kind of gradual build up? The pain slowly got bigger than the fear of change, as you say.
Yeah, I mean, a few things happened. One of the sayings that I love, that I've heard before, it says that your bottom is when your behavior drops faster than your standards. And so, because I could lower my standards with the best of them, if it was my idea, I could go drink with the rubbies and go to the worst bars and go to the worst. I'd sit in the alley and drink and think it was cool. But I finally started to do things that I couldn't minimize, justify, or laugh off as something just funny. And I started to do tragic things, things that had to do with my sexuality and theft and, cheating on my wife and, getting caught stealing things, and just started to get worse and worse. Things that I wouldn't have done or didn't think that I was that person. But, I became a liar and a thief and a cheat and all those things because my moral fiber decayed through the years of alcoholism and drug abuse.
Yeah. Well, there's fiber in grapes, but when they turn it into wine, they take all the fiber out. So yeah,
very good, Duncan.
No fiber in alcohol, moral or otherwise.
There you go.
So yeah, I mean, I think that again is probably something that people recognize, ending up in those situations where in the cold light of day there's no way we'd ever do that, but yes.
Right.
So what helped you to change? What got you to the point of sobriety then?
Well, I think it was a judge telling me that I was going to go to prison or a treatment center. And so that seemed like an easy choice to me. But that's what it took. I didn't want to get help until it was forced on me. I wasn't allowed to be around my wife anymore. I wasn't allowed to be around my family anymore. I had the law. I had lots of charges and things that prevented me from bullshitting anybody anymore, that I was a good guy. And so it was, I hit bottom and got to that spot. I remember, there's a bit in the book where I talk about I was kicked out of the house and I was living on a beach drinking, and my wife came to see me one last time with my baby, my newborn son. And she said, you have to make a choice between the beer and your son. And at that moment, I realized that there was no choice. I picked the beer because I was more in love with drinking than I was with my new son, as sad as that is. And so I kicked her out. I stayed there, and then I ended up coming out of a nightclub one night, and I couldn't stand up, and I was laying on the sidewalk, and people were stepping over me, laughing at me. And then I realized I am a drunk. I'm a street drunk. And the awareness of how far I'd gone down hit me. And so I called my wife the next day and said I was willing to try to get better, to try to get better, to get her back. And so And that began the journey, the long journey of I took the psychiatrist's advice and the judge's advice, and I signed up for a treatment center and started the long journey of recovery.
So that you, as you say, you started in the treatment center. What sort of program was there in the treatment center? What sort of things were you doing?
So it was like a 28-day treatment center where they, you first go in and they educate you about the disease of alcoholism. So I was quite shocked to find out that there was actually I was just like a textbook case. I was just a run of the mill alcoholic. I thought I was so unique. I was a romantic. I was one of the old souls. And I had created this whole self vision around the romance of being a drunk and dying early of alcoholism. But then I sort of saw in this treatment center, no, it's just a disease genetically passed down, and you're not that unique. And there's thousands, maybe millions of people that have the same disease, and that there's a way to recover from it. And so, I got a small bit of hope, but then they made us go to AA. And I remember my first meeting, sitting in an AA meeting, and I saw the word God, all through the steps. And I thought, oh, I'm doomed for sure, because I can't believe in God. I was an anarchist. I was an atheist. I thought God was for stupid people, for the suckers. So I lost all hope. I thought, well, if this is their answer, I am doomed. And I left the meeting and I went out into the dark and sat on the steps. And at that moment, I was a hopeless. I'd given up hope. I thought I am doomed to death. And that moment, I had a spiritual experience where the God I didn't believe in showed up in front of me as a white light and just said, "Believe in me and all will be well." And I had never been to church. I had no upbringing both my parents were atheists. So I had no reference point to this, but it happened. And it went into my subconscious, and it just dropped a little drop, mustard seed of hope. And it disappeared. I didn't jump up and say to everybody, "Hey, I just saw Jesus Christ." I thought they'd lock me up for sure, but somehow in the back of my mind, I believe something was there, and something cared about me, or something gave me hope. So I went back in and finished the treatment and started to go to AA regularly. And I didn't have a 180-degree recovery. It took me years of getting 6 months sober, 3 months sober, 8 months sober, and I would be unable to deal with whatever was happening in my life at that time, and I would still go to the drugs and alcohol as a solution to escape myself. But then I'd be full of remorse and regret and shame, so the next morning I was ready to beg my wife's forgiveness again and get back on the horse and get back going to meetings, and so that went on for 2 or 3 years until I finally had my last drink. And it was just looking in the mirror, seeing myself drunk and full of shame, so full of shame and self-loathing, that I was drunk again after all I'd been forgiven and all I'd gone through and all the meetings I'd been to and all the chance, second and third and fourth and fifth chances I'd be given. And there I was, drunk again. And I just fell to my knees. And for the first time in my life, I prayed, and I just said, "Okay, if you're up there, help me." And I just went to bed that night and passed out. And I got up and there's an old timer in the meetings who used to say, "Get on your knees and pray for sobriety." And so that next morning, I just rolled out of bed onto my knees, and it was the most uncomfortable thing I'd ever done in my life. The ego, the false pride was so strong that to get on my knees it was just so against my nature. But I did it, and the uncomfortableness was my pride. I had a lot of false pride. And so to get on my knees was an act of humility, and through that humility, God was able to enter my heart. And I asked for recovery. Please just give me this day free from drugs and alcohol. And I've been doing that for 31 years. So somebody answered that prayer and continues to answer it every morning. And so needless to say, I'm a believer now.
Yeah, yeah, I got that. Okay, so you did the treatment. There was like that period that you often see people, they kind of start, they stop, they sort of kind of really get, and then it really, really sticks. And obviously that's I get a very important point in your faith journey as well. Was there anything else around there that kind of like really helped it stick? Any other changes?
No, just complete defeat. I mean, I had to get to that jumping off place. That place of just complete and utter defeat, to be willing to try to reach out to a power greater than myself, because I didn't want there to be a power greater than myself. I wanted it to be that. I wanted to be my own God. And and I was so smart and so talented and so wonderful. How could I not be my own God? But obviously I wasn't. It just all my best thinking and all my best efforts and all my willpower, and there I was, a loser at life, complete loser. And couldn't stay sober. I can remember going to the first AA meetings and looking around at the people going, these are a bunch of losers. And then I would go get drunk and I'd go back to that meeting and they were still there sober. And I would say to myself, how could this be? How can they stay sober? And I'm so much smarter than them, but of course I had no humility. They had something I didn't. They had enough humility to let a God of their understanding relieve them from the obsession to drink and use drugs. And I didn't have that yet. That's the key thing I was missing.
Yeah, no, I think humility is enormously important, and that is a fairly good place to go back to Bjorn, because he's an incredibly humble guy. So he's just going to tell you a little bit more about some of the stuff that we do at Flatback Sober, and then we'll be back in a second.
Don't forget to check out flatpacksober.com. It's like the lingonberry jam for your meatballs. It's packed with tips, tricks and tactics to help you design your alcohol-free life. You'll get sneak peeks, exclusive content, great offers and even merch. Experience the wonderful AF. Visit flatpacksober.com.
Welcome back, everybody. So that was a heck of a story, and you decided to write a book about it, which, let's face it, is not unusual. I have met many people who have written books about their experiences with alcohol. In fact, oh look, I am one. But you did something a bit different. You decided to write a novel. So why did you decide to write a novel?
Well, I did a novel because, one, I wanted an anonymous, which obviously I've just blown. But two, I wanted to be able to tell all the nitty gritty truths and not feel like I had to hide anything. So I could hide behind the novel fiction rather than memoir. And so instead of saying this is my story, I just told a story that happened to be my story. But I could take that one step back. So I think just humility and fear, that the fear of being exposed to the world, and just the humility of not wanting to break my anonymity. It took my
You're on mute.
unmute. Is that better?
There you go. Yeah, that's better. Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
So, shall we just start from that question again? Because
Sure.
Okay.
So
Cool.
I did a novel instead of a memoir, just for two reasons. One, I was a coward to just put my own name and face and story out there as the truth. Because, it's been a long time since I've been that person. And, 31 years of sobriety, that guy seems like a different person to me. So to try to put my today name to it, I was a little hesitant to do that. Plus, I like my anonymity, so I didn't really want to be a public figure or anything like that. I didn't want to make money from it. I just really wanted to get the story out there to see if it would help somebody who might read it, to leave some breadcrumbs for them to say, well, if this guy got better, I can too. And so it more was like a 12-step, like just an effort to carry the message to someone who might not have found it without the book.
Yeah. It's a bit of service.
It's service work, exactly.
Yeah. No, I like it. And I mean, I think it very much chimes with, well, with my experience and definitely with the stuff you talked about. You know, you were at that point and you had no hope. However,
Right.
when you hear the stories of other people who have escaped, who have, recovered, that is when you start to get a little bit of hope. You start to think that there might be something different. You kind of, so many of us just feel trapped in what we're doing. We don't see any
Mhm.
other way out. So
Right.
that's yeah, I guess a part of what you were trying to do.
Exactly. Exactly right. Exactly right.
Now, I get the impression, you talk about this kind of romantic figure that you were, that you got a little bit of the kind of like, I don't know, Byron, maybe Hemingway kind of going on. Did you always want to be a writer? Is that a kind of a thing, or?
Um, it's interesting. I always loved music and the arts and Shakespeare and things. I never really thought about being a writer um, until this came along because I don't really have the imagination to make up stories. But when I had what I thought was a compelling enough story that with a purpose that might help others, then I got compelled to write it.
Yeah, yeah, and I bet you some people will read it and assume you must have made some of it up because it's far too wild to be true, right?
Right. And that's okay too.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. So I guess that's kind of interesting, though, isn't it? You're interested in the music, the arts, all of those kind of things, but you never actually got around to doing anything about it until you got sober.
Yeah, and sober for a long time. So, I had another career. I was in sales, so I ran sales and marketing companies. So I didn't I was never going to be the starving artist. So, I had to get to a point where my career was winding down, um, and I could look for something new to occupy me and to be of service. So that's kind of where this came from. I was semi-retired, um, when
Oh,
you know.
and did you find it sort of cathartic, kind of therapeutic to write it all down and to go
Yeah,
back over it? Did you find that useful?
yeah, definitely. I mean, although not as a necessity, I had done a lot of my own work. I've done the steps. I've had lots of sponsees, and I'd even gone, talked to psychologists and things about different issues, and so I didn't really need healing, but it still was cathartic to just, especially the childhood stuff, because to sort of tell the story of where the trauma originates from. Um, I felt it as an adult writing that, so it was cathartic. Mhm.
Yeah, and I get the impression it's one of those things that you can't sort of think, well, I've done too much therapy now. It's I'm just bored of my childhood. I got that all figured out. So a little bit extra always helps, doesn't it?
For sure, for sure.
And so, I mean, Faith, you mentioned obviously it was an important part of your recovery. Would you say it's been an important part of your ongoing sobriety as well?
Yeah, Duncan, I think that my faith has grown over the years and broadened, and I still don't go to church. I still don't consider myself religious, but I have, I'm an active member of a 12-step program, and I have a lot of guys that I carry the message to and work with to help them with their sobriety. And I pray every day, and I'm trying to grow in the likeness of my Creator, and as slow and faultingly as that is, but I do have an idea of, I have a faith today that there is a loving God, and that if I want to be happy, that I need to align my will with God's will for me. So I have to try to be of service to people, have a heart of service, and if I can go through my day and just say, how can I help the person in front of me, then fear is removed. I lived in fear for so long because I had no faith. So I thought it was up to me to control my destiny. But when I took away the me and just started to be of service to people, the fear went away because I was living in faith, the faith that I'm doing God's will. If I can share love or be a channel of God's love and try to help someone, even if it's open a door or smile or say a nice thing to somebody or encourage somebody, or, it doesn't have to be, saving someone from the depths of alcoholism and drug addiction. It can just be being a good person during the day to everyone I meet. And that's how my faith works today, in and through me.
Yeah, yeah, or dare I say it, coming on a podcast and being a great guest. That's another way to brighten up people's day. Now, I think I don't know. Maybe I misunderstood you, but I think that really kind of corresponds with something I've been thinking a lot about recently. It's almost like before we were trying to control everything and we were trying to make everything fit, and it was up to us to make it all happen and make it all perfect. And
Mm-hmm.
realizing that that is impossible and relinquishing that control and just saying, well, look, this is where I am, how can I be useful today, that is not simply the key to sobriety. Maybe that's the key to having a happy life. Am I somewhere around about right there?
I think you're right on. I think exactly that's the key. And, I think all of us, whether we're alcoholic or not, or a drug addict or not, we're all just trying to, curve the world to our wants and our needs. And so we'll get what we want out of life. And I think that that's a huge struggle. People who struggle with life and turn to drugs, alcohol, kill themselves, or crime, or anything really. All the human failings, I think, come from that. Trying to force our will, self will run riot. We're trying to force our will on the world, and we've got it all backwards. We're going to be nothing but exhausted and frustrated and fail. Pride must fail. And so once we get that idea that no, it's not what I can get out of the world, it's what I can put into it. It's not what I can get for me, it's what I can do for you. It turns everything around, and all of a sudden there's an endless energy, and everything seems to work better, and the fear is gone. And so I think you're right on with that explanation.
Thank you. I think I stole it from you. Anyway, so it's the good stuff. So I mean, I guess that kind of that understanding of yourself and understanding of the world, that self-awareness, that kind of faith, that purpose, that mission, that service. That's there's a huge amount in that. What else? That's obviously what you've done to kind of stay sober, but do you think there was anything else driving the addiction? Do you think there was anything that was missing from life?
Oh, I think a lot. I mean, like I talk about in the book. The child has got all these expectations of how life should be, and especially if you're not, doted with love as a child from, two healthy parents, which most of us couldn't be. A lot of our parents came from the, the after the war. Their parents were in the war, so they were they were war children, and their parents came home very unhappy or traumatized from the World War II, and they kind of left home early and stiff upper lip, and they really didn't know how to be loving parents, and most of that generation. And so a lot of people in my generation kind of grew up feeling like unloved, and so I think you've got that's a hole in us, and I think it's a requisite for great success in life, because I think most people with a hole chase to fill it, and so they become overachievers. They become very good at sports, or become very good at school or work, or they chase money. And so a lot of my friends had that hole, and we became super successful in life, trying to fill the hole. And my children, thanks to God, I was able to love them, and my wife loved them, and they don't have that drive. That they don't have that drive to fill the empty spaces. They just got a balance about life. And so I think it's an interesting look at success. What does it really mean? Maybe the definition, I had to reassess it, because after I achieved all the goals that I could possibly get, external goals, I realized that wasn't what filled me. What filled me was my relationships and the things that I could have without the material success. And luckily, because I've been on a spiritual quest, I was able to look at both of them and say, no, this one's means more. And I'm grateful I chased down all the material things so that I wasn't sitting in my old age wondering, I could have been a contender. I didn't have that to deal with, but I did realize later in life that the old cliche, everything in life that's worthwhile is free anyway. So
No,
yeah.
I make you absolutely right. Um, and I think that is one of the ironies of life, isn't it? You look at incredibly successful people in business, and you're right, they're trying to fill the hole. They're just
Hmm.
trying to fill it with money and power. And we
Right.
laud them and we say that they're brilliant and wonderful people. However, you look at the kind of people who are trying to fill that hole with injection drug use, and you know, we cast them on the scrap heap, don't we? And we don't want to know about them. Uh,
Right.
it all comes from exactly the same place. And, there's such
Hmm.
a strength in, providing that love for your children so that they don't have that hole. I mean,
Right.
probably means they're not going to invent iPhones, but you'll cope, right?
Right. Exactly.
Fantastic, fantastic. Look, that's been some very interesting ground we've covered. Before I let you go, I've got a couple of questions for you. Now, I have a feeling I might be able to answer this one myself, but as you're not a fan of IKEA, I'm guessing you've not actually had the meatballs, not tried the IKEA meatballs.
No, I haven't.
No, okay. It doesn't really matter that much. My theory on the IKEA meatballs is nobody really likes them. They just kind of have to eat them because they're in IKEA. It's like
I
you have
see.
to do it because you're there. You don't like it, but you have to do it. Which
Right.
is my really weird segue into my final question, which is what is the thing that people should do in sobriety? They don't actually want to do it, but they really should do it.
Yeah, when in Rome. Um, yeah, I think the things you have to do in sobriety if you really want to get to that happy place, because I know lots of people that are sober but still not happy, and I think that the have to is go to meetings regularly and be of service. Wash the dishes, welcome the newcomer, spend time with people that are struggling to get sober and try to help them, and do the deal. It doesn't matter how long you've been sober. I've been sober 31 years. My happiness, I'm probably not going to drink today or tomorrow, but my happiness will depend upon how much I can be of service to others and be willing to be helpful. And that sometimes that's even with your own family, or your own spouse, is just be a good spouse. And I do things with my wife that maybe aren't as exciting or dramatic as they could be with with a bunch of my buddies, but I get a different type of joy from it. I get a joy of being a good husband and being a companion, a deep intimacy with a long, my wife's been with me almost 40 years, so she's like my best friend. So I think when you do things that don't sound glamorous and exciting, you learn how to get joy out of the simple things in life, and it allows your relationships to get deeper and more meaningful.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I've got this vision of old us, like 20 something us, sitting in a bar, laughing at us now, going, those idiots, what do they mean? Going for a walk and having lunch with your wife is like,
Yeah.
so much better things you could do with life. But, we'll forgive them, won't we? Because they'll learn.
Yes, we will.
They'll get around to figuring it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a great answer. I do like that one. Finally, though, where can people find out more about what you do? Where can they get hold of your novel? All of that sort of stuff.
Well, I don't really exist. So the novel was written by H.W. Terrence, which is just my name backwards. So H.W. Terrence is the author of Thirst, which was that hole that little boy had in his soul that he was thirsting to fill, and that novel can be found on Barnes and Noble or Amazon or even Kindle. and it's not very expensive, but hopefully the message is rich. And so that's
Yeah,
that's
well,
that's it.
all of the things that are worthwhile in life, as you said earlier, you can get for free or about 99 cents on Kindle, probably.
There you go. Almost free.
Fantastic, fantastic. We'll stick a link to that in the show notes and everything. But look, I mean, thank you so much for your time. It's been fantastic talking to you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. You have definitely done your service for the day. You can go out and enjoy yourself.
Thank you, Duncan. Thank you for what you do, and I really enjoyed speaking to you. You're a wonderful man.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan.
We're out of time, but for some reason we still have a few screws left over. If you enjoyed the show, we'd really appreciate a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. Help us spread the Flatpack love. Until next time, enjoy the wonderful AF.
I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did bringing it to you. If you love what you're hearing and want to stay updated, join the Flatpack Sober community on Facebook. Don't forget to click the subscribe button.